How's it going, everyone? Texas Man here. Hope that you guys are all having a great day. If you guys would please give this video a thumbs up. If you guys do enjoy it, subscribe, of course. If you guys have not already, also do me the biggest favor of all. Make sure you guys hit the bell notification button so you guys don't miss out on future videos or streams here on the channel. As always, if you guys have any movie shows you guys want me to cover here on the channel, please let me know in the comment section down below. You guys can also find me on Twitch at Douglas447. Stream there at least once a week. And I hope you guys enjoy my review of Star Wars The Phantom Menace. So recently I put out a poll and I asked you guys, do you guys want me to cover the Star Wars films? I've already done a review of Star Wars 7, 8, and 9. So a lot of you guys probably don't know this, but my entire purpose and reasoning behind why I started the Texas Man YouTube channel was because of my distrust, hate, and lack of love towards Star Wars 8 The Last Jedi, which led me to create this channel. And of course, that has expanded into me not only covering Star Wars, but other films, film franchises, video games, and of course, TV shows from things besides just Star Wars. But I realized something I've never talked about in depth in individual videos, talking about Star Wars episodes 1 through 6. So I am planning on doing a review for every single Star Wars episode 1 through 6 here on the channel. I don't know if I've done one specifically for Rogue One and Solo yet. I might, maybe, if these videos get enough love and attention. So make sure you guys watch all the way through and make sure you guys give them thumbs up. But Star Wars The Phantom Menace has been out for over 2 decades now at the time of recording this video. It came out in 1999. And I want to talk about the fact that I never got to watch the original trilogy and I never got to watch the prequels when they obviously came out in theaters. I ended up watching the original trilogy, the original versions and the special editions on VHS and slash DVD. And now I have all of the films on Blu-ray. And maybe one day I'll get them on 4K when 4K is not so dang expensive. But I enjoy watching Star Wars episodes 1 through 6 at least once a year. It's a fun thing to do to rewatch the Skywalker saga. No, episode 7, 8, and 9 is not Skywalker saga. It's all about Rey and Palpatine and all that other Disney garbage that I just don't really care about rewatching. When you watch Star Wars Return of the Jedi, it does feel like a good, proper conclusion. I don't care what Disney wants to shove down my throat. Anakin Skywalker was the chosen one. He brought balance to the Force through the help of his son, defeated the Emperor. The end. Okay? No more. No need for anything else. But getting back to Star Wars The Phantom Menace, something that a lot of people don't understand is that this film was a setup movie. And I think that's probably one of the biggest problems with this film, not Jar Jar Binks specifically, but the film is a setup film. The film, unfortunately, had to tackle the fact that it is Star Wars Episode 1. It's not Star Wars Episode 4, where you can say things about things that really haven't been seen on screen. Star Wars A New Hope was able to be like, hey, Obi-Wan's mentioning the Clone Wars. What are the Clone Wars? We've never seen that. So Episode 4 had the liberty of being vague in terms of characters and plots and events that the audience had never seen yet. And it was able to tell a compelling story within its 2-hour runtime, basically. Star Wars The Phantom Menace had a gigantic problem because it had to be a prequel, an origin story, the first introduction, lore-wise, to Star Wars. Because it had to be a setup movie, not just for Star Wars Episode 2 and 3, which would follow, but it had to make sure it was grounded in reality and believable to set up and lead in properly to the original trilogy of Episode 4, 5, and 6. It had to introduce a lot of plots, a lot of characters, a lot of lore and worlds, and make sure everything was perfectly established. That way it wouldn't ruin any sort of canon that was established prior in Episode 4, 5, and 6. It also had to juggle the fact that at the time this film was coming out, video games were on the rise, and comics and books and other forms of media were on the rise. So George Lucas took that into account. He's like, okay, I need to make sure Star Wars Episode 1, it's not just the beginning of a new trilogy, but it's a prequel to the original trilogy, and it's going to explode and expand Star Wars into other forms of media, whether that's shows, games, books, you name it. Phantom Menace was the gigantic setup for everything that we know and love today, including things like Clone Wars, Rebels, The Mandalorian, Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire, Star Wars Resistance. All that stuff was done because Star Wars The Phantom Menace established it. Star Wars The Phantom Menace is it's the beginning chalkboard of everything explosive. Without Star Wars The Phantom Menace, we would have no frame of reference as to things such as the Old Republic. We wouldn't have a frame of reference as to when the Old Republic took place chronologically within the Star Wars franchise if the Phantom Menace never established itself as to where it took place in the timeline. Without Phantom Menace, Old Republic games and such would not exist. We wouldn't be getting things like Star Wars The Acolyte, that's on Disney Plus, for example. So it had a lot to do with setup. However, because it's a big setup movie, Star Wars The Phantom Menace fails on the fact that it doesn't offer much in entertainment. I rewatched the movie again, both in theater and at home. And it's just basically the premise, the plot, and the characters. It's basically Star Wars A New Hope, but instead of fighting the Empire, you're fighting a separatist droid occupation. Literally, the separatist droid command ship is the Death Star. Like, it is literally destroyed the exact same way. You have to get inside of the gizmo, you shoot 2 proton torpedoes, LOL. Star Trek reference in the Star Wars video. Got it. You got to shoot 2 blue balls. I can't make it straight. I can't. You shoot 2 blue balls into a port, and it implodes. Okay, it blows up from the inside. Very innovative, George Lucas. Good job. But seriously, if you think about it, Phantom Menace and A New Hope, they're basically carbon copies of each other. The only difference is that Anakin and Luke are interchangeable. No, I'm joking. The thing with the Phantom Menace is it's an origin story for the Star Wars franchise. Now, I will say Star Wars Phantom Menace, it's definitely better than the sequel trilogy that we have. Like, I would rather watch The Phantom Menace for all of its flaws and boring parts in it than I would rather watch Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker put together. The musical score by John Williams in this film is excellent. It's just top notch, especially Duel of the Fates. It's epic. It's great. Also, this is the first film we get to see a Jedi die. Think about that for a second. Think about it. Before Phantom Menace came out, we had 3 movies. New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. In none of those films does a Jedi die by a lightsaber. Okay? None. Obi-Wan gets killed by Darth Vader in a very clumsy, sacrificial way. Obi-Wan doesn't die in a lightsaber duel. Okay? He's not dying and he just loses in the middle of a fight. He sacrifices himself. Okay? Empire Strikes Back. No one dies. Return of the Jedi. The Emperor gets shot down an air shaft by Vader. Luke takes Vader's hand off, whoop-de-doo, but he doesn't get killed by Luke with a lightsaber. Star Wars The Phantom Menace is the first Star Wars movie where we see a lightsaber duel, and in the middle of the duel, a Jedi is killed by somebody else wielding a lightsaber. And it's a permanent death. Qui-Gon Jinn's death, played by Liam Neeson, which is great, his death signifies that the Jedi, even at their prime, in their time of peace and justice, can be killed. And unfortunately, that's something that has never transitioned well, for whatever reason, into Disney Star Wars. You see it constantly, whether that's in Star Wars Rebels, The Ahsoka Show, Mandalorian, the sequel trilogy, anytime anyone gets stabbed by a lightsaber or has an injury, they just magically like get force healed. Like in episode 9 by Rey, she force heals a snake. Like, oh, there's a little boo boo. I'm gonna use force healing. Just like, oh god. If force healing is a thing, why in the world couldn't Obi-Wan use it on Qui-Gon Jinn? I know I've brought this up before on my YouTube channel, but that just pisses me off that Rey Skywalker can do it in episode 9, but the Jedi couldn't do it in episode 1. That also brings me into a neat little point that episode 1, The Phantom Menace, at the very beginning, rewatch the movie if you guys forget this, because I think a lot of people do. This film introduced force speed running. So at the beginning of the film, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, they're getting shot at by the droidekas. And they use force speed run to get away. And they just like zoom. It's like Sonic the Hedgehog or Flash. They just go super fast using the force. And that force ability is never mentioned or used again with anything else within Star Wars, whether it's movies or shows. It's never mentioned, never seen again, done. I'm sure it's been used in games for the sake of variety of force abilities, but it's just kind of weird that it's never like used again to get out of dangerous situations within films or shows. Next thing I want to talk about, the pod racing scene. It's cool, it's fun, but it goes on for way too long, and it felt like it was done specifically for 2 reasons. 1, to sell video games. 2, to make sure the film actually is longer than an hour and a half. Rewatch The Phantom Menace, you tell me how long the pod race scene is. And when I mean pod race scene, I mean them getting everything set up, the racetrack, everything with the flags, and Jabba the Hutt showing up. Then we actually get the pod racing scene, and then we get the big climactic finale. That entire pod race scene is literally like a quarter of the movie. It's like 20 to 30 minutes long. If you gutted that, the film would be only 90 minutes long. Plus, it sold a lot of video games. Like, just look up Pod Racer on whatever gaming thing that you can do games on, whether it's your Xbox, PlayStation, or PC. You tell me if you cannot find Star Wars Pod Racing on it, even if it's for $2. They still sell that thing, okay? And it sold well. By the way, it's an addictive game. But the pod race scene, it's cool. But once you've seen it, you're just like, okay, this is really a George Lucas dream. He's like, if you guys know anything about George Lucas, he loves racing. He loves his cars. And the pod race scene was just his dream put to screen for half an hour, okay? Like, we need to have some sort of racing scene. We need to copy NASCAR somehow, but in Star Wars fashion. And there we go, pod racing. Last couple things I want to talk about is Jar Jar Binks is irritating. Jar Jar Binks is not a Sith Lord. Jar Jar Binks just helped Emperor Palpatine rise in power through the prequels. And that's all I'm going to say about Jar Jar Binks. I don't want to talk about him anymore. Darth Maul as a villain in this film is extremely cool. His design is excellent. And the fact of the matter is that they killed him off without really any real good reason. Like, he doesn't say anything. Think about that. Rewatch this movie. Darth Maul has a couple lines. Darth Maul, however, he never says one word. He doesn't say a single sentence to Qui-Gon Jinn or Obi-Wan when he's fighting them on Naboo. Nothing. He has a couple lines when he's talking to his master, Emperor Palpatine, but that's it. He really doesn't say anything. While he is cool in design as a Dathomirian, we don't get to know anything about him. And that's kind of sad. And I wanted more from him in the film franchise. I think he should have been a staying power within the prequels. He should have been a villain that stayed around for episode 2 and 3. Obviously, George Lucas needed to be able to introduce Count Dooku and how Jedi can turn from the Jedi Order into the Separatist / Sith Alliance. And obviously, we get General Grievous. But, General Grievous and Darth Maul both don't get all that much character development. And they're just kind of villain of the week kind of thing when it comes to these movies. Count Dooku at least had some development within episode 2 and 3. With that being said, it was kind of sad to see both Darth Maul and General Grievous be basically deleted from the prequels. They were just there as cannon fodder almost. And the only way you can actually get anything from them in terms of character development and arcs and understanding why they were the way they were in the prequel films is to watch the Clone Wars. So it is also kind of interesting, like now, because of Clone Wars and Rebels and such, that a lot of people, mainstream people, like I got my mom finally to watch Clone Wars and Rebels with me a few years ago. But before that, she's like, okay, Darth Maul's dead. Okay, General Grievous is dead. And I'm like, yeah, but if you watch Clone Wars and Rebels, you'll get more in-depth knowledge as to why they did what they did and whatnot. And it's like Darth Maul doesn't die in Episode 1. Darth Maul dies after Revenge of the Sith. He gets killed by Obi-Wan Kenobi on Tatooine after the Empire's been around for a few years. And Darth Maul, even during those few years between Revenge of the Sith and his death, he built up a criminal syndicate organization, which was kind of cool. And we get to see that in Solo. So I just wish that Darth Maul kind of stuck around more, had more time, presence on screen, because there are a lot of people that will never, ever watch Clone Wars or the Rebels show, for example, because they're like, oh, it's a cartoon, it's meant for kids. They are missing out, obviously, on some great content when it comes to those shows. But if you want to watch them, it would definitely benefit you because it'll flesh out Darth Maul and it fleshes out Grievous, which is kind of sad that you have to watch other media. And that is a big problem with the prequels. Is like if you want to have more depth and understanding to certain characters and plots and lore within Star Wars, you have to watch other media. And that is a big downfall on Phantom Menace and just the prequels in general. It's like, hey, you want to understand certain things that happen, watch other forms of media. So, and that is the thing, like I said, with Phantom Menace is doing a lot of build up and setup and whatnot for the Star Wars franchise. So it just doesn't have the time and ability to bring things fleshed out wise for everything and everyone within a 2-hour runtime. Last thing I want to talk about is that while Star Wars The Phantom Menace, and this is the same thing for Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, is that a lot of people see the prequels as a origin story and an eventuality of Anakin Skywalker and his unfortunate fall from, slave, Jedi Knight, love interest, Padme, falling in love, marrying her, and his eventual demise into becoming Darth Vader. I don't think people understand what the prequels are actually about. What I mean by that is, while that does happen, while the prequels are an origin story and they're telling a very interesting story about how Anakin becomes Vader and why, and we obviously get the Clone Wars, and we get some more lore established into the Star Wars universe, the films, Star Wars episodes 1, 2, and 3, they're centered for Palpatine. The prequel trilogy isn't really a Skywalker trilogy. The original trilogy obviously is dead set on the Skywalker family. It's very much about Skywalkers. It's about Luke Skywalker leaving home, growing up, becoming his own man, becoming a hero, and trying to redeem and get his father to see the error of his ways, of what he's been doing for the past 30 years. Episode 1, 2, and 3, and a lot of people complain about this because it's like, hey, we're focusing so much on drama and politics. The drama and the politics, yeah, it kind of drags in the prequels. However, The Phantom Menace and the other prequel films, it's all about Palpatine and how he manipulates the political systems, how he, plays the behind the scenes shadowy game so he can rise to power and become the emperor that we know of him in the original trilogy. It's all about Palpatine. I mean, Phantom Menace, the entire reason why the events in the film happen is because of Palpatine. Whether it's him being the upcoming emperor and him instructing the Trade Federation to do the blockade, to invade the planet and do this and that. Whether it's the Palpatine telling Darth Maul, go to Tatooine and find them and kill them before they can leave. Palpatine is also behind the scenes on Coruscant, of all things, where the Jedi somehow cannot magically notice that he's a Sith. That's never explained. And don't say, well, the Jedi Temple's on top of the Sith Temple, so the Sith Temple's energy just blinds the Jedi. I hate that explanation. It's stupid and dumb, and I don't like it. It just proves that the Jedi are stupid. And no wonder they got wiped out. Moving on. But Palpatine uses his political influence and he navigates those political waters to be able to become the Chancellor. And because of how stupid the Jedi and the Senate is and the courts are and how the Republic's system is established and set up, because of how poorly organized it is, he's able to get votes from people like Jar Jar Binks to not just become Chancellor, Supreme Chancellor, but because of how corrupt the Republic is, he becomes the Emperor. And we get to see that slow progression of a nobody living on Naboo to becoming a senator, to becoming a chancellor, to becoming supreme chancellor, to becoming the emperor. That's what the prequel trilogy is about. Is him playing the long game through the Senate, through influencing his apprentices, whether that's Darth Maul, Grievous, or Count Dooku, whether it's him, getting the Separatist alliance to happen, whether it's him folding Anakin Skywalker into a new apprentice of Darth Vader. It's all about his rise to power and Palpatine's rise to dominance. And that's seen clearly through the Clone Wars happening and everything. Star Wars: The Phantom Menace is a setup, not just for plot, character, and lore for just Star Wars in general, but it's a setup and introduction into how Palpatine went from a nobody into becoming the terrifying emperor that we see in Return of the Jedi. When we see him in Return of the Jedi, he's been around for a while, and he feels, for the most part, safe and secure and full of himself. The prequel trilogy shows us how and why he's able to act and behave that way in Return of the Jedi, in that throne room scene. And I think that's very powerful, and I think The Phantom Menace, starting that up, did a very excellent job doing that. Now, with all those positives and negatives established in this video, and I'm sorry that's a long video, but you know me, I'm passionate about my Star Wars. I'm just happy that The Phantom Menace exists. It's not a perfect movie. It is a very flawed movie. It's not a very entertaining movie. But if you look at it from the perspective of the fact that it is a setup film for a lot of things, I think you can enjoy it. So with that, guys, I'm going to give Star Wars: The Phantom Menace a 6 out of 10. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have an excellent day, and I will see you guys on the next video or stream. Bye, guys.